How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today we're talking about the two biggest cities in Colorado, Denver versus Colorado Springs, head to head. Which one is better for you? And we're starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everts. Listen, there's two things that we do here. One, we talk all things eating, living, breathing, experiencing the Colorado Front Range, and as a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado and team with some of the state's most talented realtors, we're helping people like you move here each and every day. So the number and email on your screen, if I could ever be of assistance to you, do not hesitate to reach out. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about what we're here for, and that is Denver versus Colorado Springs. Which one is right for you? So today we're going to look at these two cities from a variety of standpoints. We're going to talk about their landscape. We're going to talk about lifestyle, affordability, neighborhoods, industry, infrastructure, schools, a lot of different dynamics that makes each city unique. And understanding that obviously, or maybe not so obvious, depending on how much you know about Colorado, we're comparing two cities that are noticeably, sizably different. So Denver is a 10-county ecosystem metropolis. It is a large city. Again, over 3 million people in the metro area, and this stretches hundreds of square miles. And so when you talk about Denver, you have a lot of people who live in what I would call a hub. They live in a certain suburb or they live in a certain section of town. They're north of Denver, west of Denver, etc. And that tends to be where they spend the majority of their time. For instance, I live in the suburb of Lakewood, west of Denver. Most of my time is spent on the west side of town. Maybe I'm in Denver, I'm in Lakewood, or I'm in one of the western suburbs. It's only here or there that I get east of town specifically, and occasionally I go north or south. So it's not necessarily one of those cities where you're going everywhere within it. You're also competing against 3 million other people in Denver. You have just more people. You're going to have higher costs, which we'll get into as we go. But when you're talking about space, when you're talking about housing, when you're talking about groceries, things to do, Denver does tend to be more expensive. Now, Colorado Springs, on the other end, is considered the El Paso County island. It's one county, although growing. Really, we talk about bursting at the seams with how much Colorado Springs has grown. But Colorado Springs is over 500,000 people that are all contained within this one city. It's not a city or a town with multiple suburbs. Again, you could talk about Monument just north of Colorado Springs being one of theirs, but realistically, it's a little over 500,000 people just inside El Paso County. And most of the growth in Colorado Springs is pocket growth. It's development that's localized. If you live in Briargate, that's north of Colorado Springs, you basically never go to the south side of Colorado Springs or around Fountain unless you plan on getting on a plane around the airport, or maybe you're visiting Fort Carson. So one of the first big questions that always comes up about somewhere that people want to live is cost. And what I would say is that you pay, when it comes to housing specifically, whether you're buying a house or you're renting a house, for Denver, you're really paying for access. You're going to pay a premium to be near the city. You're going to have a premium to be near I-70 to get into the mountains. So that entry fee could be the difference of a couple $100,000 starting point on your home prices. Your median price is roughly around $615,000 to $640,000 for a single family home in the Denver metro area. And there's a lot of times where you're talking about a decent in-shape fixer-upper. And appreciation was a huge factor in Denver. Not that it isn't to say in Colorado Springs, but especially in the 2010s, home prices were skyrocketing up through the pandemic. And Denver was really a globalized city because you have so many different companies and headquarters working here in Denver. So you were paying a premium for that, and you're paying for your average 2-bedroom apartment well over, or at least substantially over, $2,000 for that apartment. And the trade-off again is that you have this large city, you have all the amenities of the city, and you have I-70 access to get into the mountains. Now, Colorado Springs is the more economical option when it comes to home prices. It is a place where you can find a decent house for $450,000, $500,000. It's a place where you can find a single family, 2,500 square foot, multiple bedroom, multiple bath house for what you may pay for a decent condo in the Cherry Creek neighborhood of Denver. So a lot of times the conversation when people are comparing the two cities and they have the flexibility to go to either, if affordability is something that they really want to focus on, Colorado Springs starts to become more and more appealing. You're also going to find rents that are much more reasonable. You can find a 2-bedroom for $1,600, $1,700, if not less in some areas, but you can find a decent place to live for hundreds of dollars less than you can in Denver. And while I would say the Denver market has been relatively balanced, we have multiple months, it is far more balanced in Colorado Springs. And again, even at the height of the housing market, Colorado Springs, while growing, was still continuously more reasonable than Denver's growth. Now, if we're comparing these two cities, we need to compare their cities. So let's talk about downtown Denver and downtown Colorado Springs. So downtown Denver, as you might expect, capital of Denver, larger, more amenities, so it has depth. You're talking about all 4 pro sports teams. You're talking about world-class restaurants, live music, rooftop bars, a food scene that is pretty underrated, can be a bit bougie and expensive, but that is constantly, I believe, improving over the last several years. And you're talking about, like, with lower downtown and Broadway and Highlands, Rhino, you've got the true urban experience. You've got a lot of areas to experience when we're talking about Denver. There's a lot to do for, again, a decent sized city. Are we New York or Chicago or LA? No, but certainly larger than a Colorado Springs. Now, knocks on that. Safety. When we talk about going down to Denver, now do I feel like I'm in danger there? No, but there have been some areas of concern. 16th Street Mall, Union Station, 2 areas in particular that are supposed to drive a lot of traffic. We're having a lot of issues with vagrancy, a lot of issues with property crime. And so while those things are improving, it's not necessarily fixed. I don't want to give you the idea that Denver is this scary place that you shouldn't go down to. Again, I visit it often. I visit it with my family, bring my wife, bring my child. I'm not intimidated to do so, but certainly something that needed to be addressed or improved upon. And you can tell that Denver is really a city that is built for people who want options. There are a lot of different things to do, whether it's the museum, science, zoo, you name it. There's a large list. Again, is it what you would expect out of a metro area? Yes, and continuing to expand upon that. And the last thing I would mention, and to some scale it's going to be the same in Colorado Springs, but that comfort and your access to things is going to depend a lot on the blocks. There's certain areas of Denver that you can live in where you're walking to everything. There's all sorts of amenities, the things you might enjoy nearby. So, you're going to see a difference in certain areas. Again, as you do in any city, but it may be more pronounced in a more populated city like a Denver. Now, Colorado Springs is a more intimate. It's a smaller city, although still decent in size, not to the mass. It's a more curated scene. It's not a comprehensive one. So for instance, along Tejon Street, you're gonna have 140 shops, restaurants, breweries. I shouldn't say 140 shops. You're gonna have all the shops, breweries, restaurants. I mean, it's very solid. If you're expecting Denver depth, no, you're gonna miss out. You're gonna hit the ceiling fast, but plenty to do. Nature is the real amenity to Colorado Springs. Garden of the Gods is free. Pikes Peak is 15 minutes from downtown. Morning coffee, afternoon, you could be above the tree line enjoying those things. So that access doesn't exist anywhere near downtown Denver. You can get into the mountains, in the Rocky Mountains from Denver pretty quickly, but not 15 minutes away and not to the level of that outdoor amenity that you have in Colorado Springs. Now, when it comes to safety there in Colorado Springs, and again, please be aware of your surroundings anywhere you go. Nowhere is 100% safe at all times, but the downtown safety is well managed. There is talk that the citywide picture can be more complicated, that the Clean and Safe program handled over 2,200 incidents in the first 6 months of last year with fewer than 3% requiring police. So you had these different numbers. Colorado Springs, the talk is that the downtown feels safe, a lot of the feedback there, but that doesn't mean that you should assume that anywhere you go in the city is. Now, the one thing I will say is that the small city comfort can be real. When you get into downtown Colorado Springs, to me, the vibe is that you can walk around without a second thought, that it's relaxed. The downtown master plan is literally asking for grocery stores, pharmacies, and gyms that aren't there yet. So there's growth that you're going to see within Colorado Springs, pulling more people into the downtown area, just not there quite yet. I will say, as we're talking through this video, whenever I'm talking to people who are coming from large cities, some of them that I already mentioned, and they talk about Denver or Colorado Springs, I think Colorado Springs can be a bit more of a culture shock if you're coming from any of these major, massive cities. Not to say that Denver isn't. Denver is not anywhere near the size of New York, Chicago, LA. But if you're coming from a modest-sized city or smaller, I don't think you're going to be blown away nor disappointed with the size of Colorado Springs. I think it's a great sized city for most people. Now, it's very common as we're talking about both of these cities that people are moving to Colorado for the mountains, the Rocky Mountains. You want that access. And there's a couple key components here. So both have quick access to the mountains, no doubt about it. Colorado Springs more so. If you're talking about just a visual of the mountains, Colorado Springs genuinely beats Denver because Colorado Springs sits in this valley. The mountains are right there on the edge of Colorado Springs. So even when you're on the east side of town, the mountains feel like they are right there. I mean, they genuinely kind of are. Whereas in Denver, we have great mountain views, but they are a bit more set back. And if you're on the east side of town, you may not have them at all because Denver does not sit in that valley. Now, when it comes to access to the mountains, you can get to Garden of the Gods, Pikes Peak, as I mentioned earlier, fast in Colorado Springs. There's a lot of great hikes within minutes of downtown Colorado Springs, or again, most of these suburbs. Denver, your drive to get into the Rocky Mountains or to get into the foothills of the Rocky Mountains could be as little as 20 minutes. You're not to your location, like you might be the Garden of the Gods, but you could be there 15, 20 minutes if you're starting from the west side of town. Make that 40 to 45 minutes, maybe up to an hour with traffic if you're from the east side of town. Now, when we're talking about getting up to the ski resorts, this is where a debate may ensue, and my buddy Andrew, who lives down in Colorado Springs, gave me some perspective on this. So in Denver, you think you have the I-70 highway, nice and easy, and when there's no traffic, you do. You can get up to some of the most amazing ski resorts, the type of places that people travel to Colorado to go see, and you can get there very quickly. The issue is when you have traffic. Friday up the hill, typically Sunday coming back, you can get really bogged down with traffic. So that access can be skewed. Now, Colorado Springs, you have a couple options. You can head north, basically up to Denver, and then I-70 over, or you have some back roads to get up into these ski resorts. Now, a lot of feedback will be that those back roads, if it's snowy, if it's nasty out, can be pretty tough. But the locals I talked to in Colorado Springs swear up and down that they have quick access to a lot of these ski resorts because of the fact that they don't have to deal with that traffic. So as long as they have a vehicle that can handle some of those passes, and as long as the snow is not too bad, they feel they have quicker access coming from Colorado Springs than we do from Denver. And listen, I could Google Maps stuff all day. I like perspective from boots on the ground, and that is what they are telling me. And at the end of the day, if you are living in either of these cities and you don't necessarily have to drive up or down the mountains at peak times, again, going into the weekend and out of the weekend, this may not apply to you at all. You're going to have easy access regardless. Now, certainly a key factor of choosing one of these two cities is going to be the economy and infrastructure. And as you might expect with a city its size, Denver's economy is going to be more diverse. It is the corporate engine of Colorado. It is the core career city. They've got aerospace, tech, bioscience, finance. If your company folds, you can find another high-paying job. I mean, you have the opportunity within 10 miles because there are these different companies, these different industries. I don't want to give you the idea that finding high-paying jobs is easy in Denver. They're very competitive, but there are multiple fields. You have multiple tech centers. The Denver Tech Center in Greenwood Village. You've got the Interlochen Tech area in Broomfield. You've got tech companies in Boulder. They're all over the place. Again, you still have healthcare, education. There's a lot of industries. Oil and gas. I'm going to keep blurting out industries. Denver relies on a lot of different industries, so it's not as vulnerable. If one industry takes a hit, there are others to pick up that weight. Now, we also talked about the fact that Denver is more expensive. So too is the higher ceiling for income possibilities in Denver. I don't mean to keep backtracking on this. That's not to say that there aren't good paying jobs in Colorado Springs, but the higher end jobs typically, and more of them, are in Denver. Now, Colorado Springs relies a lot on the military for its economy. Roughly 40% of its economy comes from defense and military. So if you aren't a contractor, you're not a soldier, you're not a civilian employee on the base, your job options may shrink fast, or maybe a remote worker. That's where a lot of the economy from Colorado Springs comes from, is that military grouping. And a huge part of that is the space or aerospace boom. So with Space Force and aerospace hubs expanding in 2026, the tech side is really growing in Colorado Springs, but it's still really tied to Uncle Sam's budget. So it's something you have to keep an eye on there. For any of my fellow military families, I'm a Navy vet myself, I will say Colorado Springs is consistently rated as one of the top places to live for active military and for veterans, retirees, you name it. Colorado Springs does a lot to support military families, not just active duty, consistently ranked high. There's some great areas in Denver, not to say, but Colorado Springs, if you're thinking, of these two cities, and that military presence and how well they treat their veterans plays a big role, you're going to want to take a long look at Colorado Springs for that reason. Education, a key factor certainly for a lot of people. And listen, Denver, as I mentioned earlier in the video, 10 different counties. Denver has a lot of different school districts. So when you're talking about Denver public schools compared to these various county schools and districts within them, you're gonna have a mixed bag. And that's something that will take a bit more homework perhaps. So in the Denver Metro, first you've got the DPS lottery. Denver public schools is admittedly like a mess of choice because it's school choice, and the theory is that you can pick schools, but if you live in the area, you have a better option to get into the schools, and if you live in the wrong spot, you have a lower chance of winning that lottery. So DPS can be a bit of a mess at times. Whereas when we're talking about the premium or these counties or school districts that tend to be rated high on a consistent basis, Cherry Creek School District, Douglas County School District are a couple that come to mind. Jeffco being pretty good, Littleton being pretty good, rated overall. But when we talk about Cherry Creek School District, which is routinely one of, if not the top school districts as far as just overall rating in the Denver metro area, as you might assume, home prices, whether you're buying or renting, are higher in those areas. So you do pay a premium for school districts in a lot of these counties and districts, areas, neighborhoods within Denver. Now with the Colorado Springs Metro, you've got your top tier as far as, again, just general ratings, whether it's niche.com, betterschools.com. Districts 20 to the north, District 12 to the southwest are some of the best in the state, routinely rated. Again, I always preface, just like safety, when it comes to schools, overall rating of an area does not guarantee that every school within that district or that county is going to be exceptional. You're going to want to do your due diligence. But from an overall rating, 20 and 12 to the south typically come in very high. People move to the Springs specifically for some of these various districts and for the schools. And when we talk about charter dominance down in Colorado Springs, the Springs has a massive culture of charter and private schools that actually perform. And that is a big stabilizing factor within Colorado Springs, are these charter schools, are these private school options. Talking a little bit about transportation and infrastructure, listen, you're gonna deal with a lot more traffic in Denver. Denver's traffic, especially along I-25, some of our service roads, but I-25 heading through the city can be a dumpster fire a lot of the time. And there really isn't the option to expand these highways. Our I-25, I-70, our east-west highway through the city has gotten some expansion. There's some areas where they could expand, add a lane to each side, add an HOV lane, excuse me. So you're seeing a lot of that. As far as bus systems, light rail, the RTD mess, man, I'll tell you what, the light rail is currently undergoing massive downtown reconstruction. It's unreliable. The A train or the A line to the airport is basically the only thing that really works well, the thing that gets a lot of compliments for it. Otherwise, the light rail could use some improving. They're certainly working on it. We'll see where that goes. When it comes to biking, pedestrian push, I mean, Denver is removing a lot of car lanes for bike lanes. And if you hate traffic it's only getting worse by design. This idea that more people are going to bike all over the city, I mean, to some extent, there's areas where it makes sense, and then there's some areas where they really bottleneck traffic through this. Denver is a car necessary town. I say that. I mean, especially when you start talking about getting into the suburbs, you are going to need a vehicle, nearly guaranteed, unless you work remote and you don't like going anywhere very often. Now, Colorado Springs, not to say that they are a lot better. The car is king there. Public transit is a joke in Colorado Springs. And again, this is coming right from the horse's mouth, people who live there. You need a car for everything. Now, the Powers Boulevard expansion, they are finally extending Powers to handle the massive sprawl to the east. Now, one thing that locals are, excited about when it's done is Powers Boulevard, which is a sprawling road heading out east. They're extending Powers. Now, this is going to take a long time. You constantly see construction in Denver. You constantly see construction in Colorado Springs. I think that's just a city thing. I think you see construction everywhere. But the hope is that you have this massive sprawl of Colorado Springs out to the east, because that's really the only place you can build. Heading west, you run into the Rocky Mountains. So you have this I-25 corridor that just becomes, a trap. You get really caught in traffic. The hope is that Powers Boulevard will help with that. And that's very much a unique, I shouldn't say unique. It's a situation that both cities face, where you have only so much infrastructure to adjust. When it comes to your roads, when it comes to your public transit, most of these cities, they had populations that were well below where they are now. They stayed at those populations for a long time. And with this population boom, they're still trying to figure out and manage, how do we make roads more accessible? How do we work on public transit? What's public transit that people are actually going to use? I don't know what city you live in, but it's oftentimes you see a bus here that has 2 people on it. So really working through some of those things. And a couple things to finish up with. Let's talk just a vibe check. We got to use the term vibe, right? Denver, I heard somebody call it a mini Seattle the other day. And I don't know, I feel like Seattle is a mini Denver. No. So Denver has become much more of a transit city. A lot of people coming in, going, they're not from here. We always joke, being a native of Colorado, people have to have their bumper sticker that says native. You very rarely meet another native. A lot of people are transit. But because of that, you have, I think a high energy. You've got legalized everything, weed, mushrooms, you name it. We'll get into that later. You got food. You've got visible homelessness downtown. Just being real about it. But you've got energy. You've got people doing things out and about. The city is busy. There's a lot going on. When you get past some of the construction issues, it's a pretty city. One knock that I consistently hear about Denver is that it doesn't really have an identity. It's not an old west town. It's not a mountain town where, again, we're on a plains, just east of the Rocky Mountains. So missing that identity, a lot to do, but nothing that says, oh, that's what Denver's about. We'll talk about some of the things here in a moment that they're doing to improve that. Now, Colorado Springs, on the other hand, is considered more of the quiet life. It's the most conservative, mid-sized city left, maybe anywhere, but certainly in Colorado. It's very faith-based for the most part. It's military-centric. It's quiet after 9 p.m. It's not a big, crazy city into the evening. And there is something to be said for the boring factor. That's, again, one of the pieces of feedback I get from people is that city dies down a bit early. It's not saying, again, there isn't things to do, but not nearly as much as you might have in Denver, and not nearly as many options as you might have in Denver. And, I preface, that's where a lot of people choose Colorado Springs. Whether they want a quieter life, they want a bit more affordability, or they're moving somewhere with their family, and they just want that slower pace, or maybe they want to be able to, kind of see things coming. As far as growth, Colorado Springs has a more regimented, calmer experience with this growth, though still pretty substantial, than Denver has. And the last thing I want to talk about is the future factor. What is to come with both of these cities? So Denver has a lot coming. You've got a new Broncos stadium that will be built over the next 5 or 6 years. They're moving that from one part of just the outskirts of downtown to another in Barnum. That's going to be a multi-billion-dollar project with the new stadium, all types of infrastructure around it, commercial buildings, restaurants, you name it. So that will be a huge development. You've got two right downtown, the River Mile and Ball Arena. So River Mile is basically right where Elitch's is now, our downtown amusement park. That and Ball Arena, which is currently our arena where the Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche play. But right now it's just a parking lot. They're going to change both of those areas, again, probably over a 5 to 10 year stretch, into a ton of, apartments, commercial areas, a lot of walking trails along the South Platte River. They're even dredging the South Platte. They're even having the Army Corps of Engineers going out to the South Platte to make sure that that will work for paddle boarding and kayaking. They're going to add a lot of green space, acres of park area. So this is really going to change the landscape of downtown Denver, which right now is maybe not as walkable as you might expect the downtown area to be. Now again, this isn't a quick change, this isn't something that's going to happen right away, but something that, at least I'll tell you, I am very excited about. Now for Colorado Springs, a couple things. One, you've got the water rule. There is 128% water rule. That means new developments must prove that they have more water than they need. And this is a growing challenge in a lot of these metro areas as you have so much development down there, and Colorado Springs already has a tough time with water. Not to say that Denver doesn't. So that's a new rule here. This is literally freezing the city's boundaries, and it's forcing prices up in certain establishments because of this water. You also have the Peak Innovation Park. This is a huge job growth area near the airport. This is kind of like the new Denver Tech Center of the South down near the airport. So a lot of growth there and a lot of positive changes. When you go down to Colorado Springs, one thing you're going to notice, and again, you see this in Denver, most growth of these towns happens to the east, to the plains. Both cities, Colorado Springs much quicker than Denver, but both run into the Rocky Mountains. There's not a lot of room to move to the west. And again, there's only so much north and south you're going to do. So we're certainly filling in the territories between Denver and Colorado Springs. It used to be just a vast emptiness. And now, really, you see a lot going on between those two cities. But all this growth to the east, a lot of great neighborhoods there in Colorado Springs. And if I give Colorado Springs a huge edge to Denver, this is something I enjoy myself, is that, when I talk to people about moving to the east side of town in Denver, that mountain view really becomes an issue for at times. Whether you're getting cut off by the city or you're just in an area where you just flat out can't see the mountains or they're too far away. With Colorado Springs, the city, the downtown being in the valley, the proximity you are from the mountains, you get some fantastic mountain views from the east side of town that I really envy. And heck, I live on the west side of Denver and my mountain views aren't as spectacular as some of those. So something to consider. At the end of the day, there is a ton to love about Denver, a ton to love about Colorado Springs, and two cities that a lot of people consider living in. Now, last thing before I leave you is a lot of people ask me how realistic it is to live in one and work in the other. And specifically, it's usually living in Colorado Springs, working in Denver. When there is any type of traffic, you are looking at an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I would lean towards 2 hours for the drive to Colorado Springs to Denver. If somebody tries to tell you it is an hour, right now, ask them how often they make that drive. Because unless they are coming from the very northern tip of Colorado Springs and they're hitting the very southern tip of Denver, it ain't happening. So the idea of living in one and working in the other, be ready for a long and painful drive on a consistent basis. Still, two spectacular cities to compare, and if you have any questions about them, that's a great opportunity to reach out to me. The number and email, just know that I am always the person, answer your phone calls, answer your texts, answer your emails, there, when and if you need me. That was Denver, that was Colorado Springs. Which one is actually the better city for you? This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jimmy Everts. Until I see you next time, peace.